Hello everybody and welcome to Beyond the Hat with me, Street, and Richard, the creator of the Top Hat Gaming Man. Today we are going to be looking at will Capcom ruin Street Fighter 6? I think this is a big topic that has done very well on your channel.
Yes.
Or on your main channel. What the hell are we talking about?
I've got a huge Street Fighter following on my channel because I've made so many videos on Street Fighter. So that, of course that makes sense. In regards to why Street Fighter 6 could be screwed up by Capcom is because they are a company who in the past have certainly shown that they can be so greedy that at times it ends up being to their own detriment.
Yeah, they have made some colossal screw-ups at different times. Yeah. I mean, going through the comments, there was lots and lots of comments with people apprehensive about what could go wrong. Yeah. And we're going to cover some of those.
Yeah. The main point that a lot of people would raise related directly to the fact that they were worried that the game would contain far too much DLC.
Yeah, see, this is a complaint that's been going on for years about every new game. Is everything going to move to DLC? People have been worried about this for years and years and years. I was worried about this. You know, you're going to end up paying, £50 for a game and then end up paying another 50 or 60 or 70 pounds, end up paying £120 for a game, within 2 years.
Capcom, though, out of all companies, have a track record for doing this. Yeah. The only one I think of worse, there's probably a lot worse because I don't play that many AAA games. But I know EA have got a terrible reputation for it, haven't they?
Yeah, EA with loot boxes and stuff like that, that went a little bit wrong.
But for example, back when they released Street Fighter 5, it was so bare bones that it was a Street Fighter game that didn't contain an arcade mode. Like, tell me, what is Street Fighter? What is it?
It's an arcade mode. It's
an arcade game.
It's an arcade game.
An arcade game that doesn't have an arcade mode.
That's crazy.
That's an insult, isn't it?
That's
really
amazing. So you've released a game that isn't a game?
No, it was basically, it was, I think it only had really competitive play, so you could play other people online with it.
Oh God, no.
And that's not what Street Fighter is it?
No, it's not. That's depressing. I mean, people getting concerned about DLC, I think I understand it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's the way games are going now, and it's a good way of keeping games cheap. I mean, how much did you pay for Super Mario All-Stars when it came out?
I got it as a packing game with a Super Nintendo.
Okay, how much did you pay for a Super Nintendo game?
Back then they was about £60 each, I think.
Okay, how much is a AAA game now?
£60, I think.
There we go. Between 50 and 60. Maybe 70 at a push, like when the Xbox Series X and PS5 first came out, you were looking at like £70 maybe, which people were outraged about then. But how much is everything else? Everything else is so much more expensive than it was than the early 90s. Games haven't gone up in price. And the cost of making games has gone up in price exponentially.
Capcom, though, was like doing things very differently to other companies even back then. And if we're talking about Capcom released games, from what I can recall, one of the most expensive games around for the Super Nintendo was Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which I believe was about £70 at retail in comparison to the others. And if you bought Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it wasn't a new game, it was an enhanced version of Street Fighter 2. Yeah. So rather than adding DLC back then, they was releasing the same game over. Like that game on the Super Nintendo was released 3 times in different versions. You had Street Fighter 2, you had Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then you had Super Street Fighter 2. And if you was fortunate enough to have then upgraded your Super Nintendo to a Panasonic 3DO, you would have also had to buy Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So there were 4 versions of the same game. And then you also had Champion Edition. So I think that was 5 different iterations of exactly the same game.
Yeah, which is absolutely mad. And I can understand why people would be worried. But it's a good way. DLC is a good way of keeping the cost of games down, because you can go out and buy a game for £50, and if you don't like it, you don't have to pay any more. Or if you don't like it that much,
the problem is if you want to play Street Fighter 5 and access the game's massive roster of fighters, that's a fortune now. From what as far as I'm aware, like it costs hundreds of pounds to actually play a proper version of Street Fighter 5. Whether you want to play, say, Mario Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch, You just paid £50, you've got the full game forever. They might add new bits here and there, but Street Fighter V was released unfinished and everyone was pretty much aware it was an unfinished game which was to be built on in the future.
Okay, so what we're looking at here are two slightly different things, I think. DLC in itself is possibly a good way of doing things moving forwards. Unfortunately, Capcom in the past have shown that they've been horrible and greedy and a nasty company and have screwed people that have gone out and bought the game by making it ridiculously expensive rather than just a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is. I think that the DLC thing can be done well. If you look at a game like, which is definitely more comparable, if you look at Super Smash Bros. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it released with a ridiculous library of characters.
Yeah, huge already.
So much stuff. And then they said, okay, we're not going to charge you too much more, but we're just going to add things here and there.
It already felt like you had a full game though. When Street Fighter V was released, it did not feel like a full game. So people are concerned, I guess, again, they're going to get a Street Fighter V and all you're going to be able to play as is Luke and Ryu and that's it, with no arcade mode. So all you can do is play with Ryu versus Luke in competitive play and that's going to be it. That's obviously an extreme exaggeration, but something along those lines. Maybe you'll get to be allowed to play as Chun-Li as well. Yeah. do you know what I mean though?
For the female audience.
Yeah, can you see the concern?
Yeah.
Can you see
yeah.
the
Oh
concern?
yeah, definitely.
So an unfinished state, basically. A game in an unfinished state.
I think unfinished state, missing massive chunks of games and it being a horrible buggy mess is another way. There are so many AAA games at the moment that are releasing their games completely unfinished. And that could happen. That could happen. If you look at recent AAA games that you probably wouldn't have gone anywhere near.
Yeah.
Battlefield 2042. Battlefield is a huge franchise that has released some amazing games. But when it was released, it was in such a poor state that it was practically unplayable. And it had no content.
And because of what you're talking about is why I cannot get hyped about modern games whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like I had some people pretty much calling me in the comment section on our first Street Fighter 6 video, calling me a killjoy for not getting excited about it. And just let other people be excited about it. But
we'll let you be excited, that's fine. You can be as excited as you want.
They can be excited, but it still does seem a bit strange to me getting excited about an unfinished game.
Yeah.
Because what they're going to get is probably unlikely it's going to be a finished game.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. Let's be honest, it's not going to be a finished game.
As long as, hopefully they've learned from their mistakes, but releasing a game that is unfinished is a bad idea, and Battlefield will tell you this. There are other games, really well publicised games, that more people will be aware of, such as Cyberpunk. It was so buggy and unfinished, and just wasn't in a state to be released to the public, that the game flopped and nobody gives a shit. People stopped caring.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because the game, from what I hear now, is in a relatively good state. Going back a few more years.
Street Fighter 5 was released to a lot of backlash at the time because so people are concerned the same as Capcom. So basically, they could ruin Street Fighter 6 through too much DLC, an unfinished state, and personally, I think what could be Capcom's undoing as well is focusing too much on the competitive scene rather than the mass market.
Yeah, talking about the video where probably a lot of people that are going to watch this are going to come from, which is your video. We talked about how competitive Street Fighter 3 was, and in fact it was released to a competitive audience, which hindered its sales massively because the casual player didn't care.
Yeah.
They were still having fun with Street Fighter 2, and even to this day, most people don't go back. And if you say to most people, let's go back and play an old Street Fighter game, which one would you like to play? They're not going to choose the one that was marketed to the competitive scene. They're going to choose two, which was fun.
Just as a little anecdote here. When I was doing a panel at a retro gaming event in front of hundreds of people, I asked the audience in attendance, hands up if you play Street Fighter 2 on release. Everyone put their hands up. Hands up, keep your hand up if you play Street Fighter 3. That was the reaction I got.
Yeah. And it's what happened. The sales figures show it. And the problem is that it's difficult to completely get that in YouTube comments, which we have learned, because the people that enjoy Street Fighter 3 are quite vocal.
And you've also got to take into account as well that I've got an audience with a huge already built-in Street Fighter concentration. Hell, I've made standalone videos on Street Fighter 3 roster members and their history. So, of course, I'm going to have a concentrated group of people who like Street Fighter 3.
Yeah.
But my content is not aimed at the mass market. It's aimed at a minority who love Street Fighter so much that they want to learn about the lore of all the characters, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is fine. But there's a good chance that Capcom will not learn from their mistakes, and I think that could.
I would hope they probably have by this point, but as we know, history does have a track record for repeating itself. So, Street Fighter 3 came out. They realised what they'd done wrong, and they didn't end up releasing a new Street Fighter game for years and years afterwards. Not a mainline one anyway. But when they did finally get round to releasing Street Fighter 4, a large chunk of the game was inspired by Street Fighter 2. And for that reason, the game ended up being a huge commercial success.
Yeah.
Because they channeled what people loved about Street Fighter so much in the first place, rather than trying to reinvent the whole thing as something new, which what they kind of did with Street Fighter 3.
Yeah. Hopefully they will learn then. Hopefully they're going to continue that trend and live off their successes.
But there is always the case. I think, they could have got a complacent. Street Fighter 4 was a success. Street Fighter 5 was a success. Let's try something different. And then they try something different and they lose their market. But it could happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like I said, history has a record for repeating itself.
Yeah. The other thing that people were really angry about, which is something that I think that you're going to have to talk about more than me, is people are worried about they're going to reboot the timeline.
Yeah.
Start everything again.
I know not that many people... This is, again, quite a niche point, because I don't think that many people give a crap about Street Fighter lore, because all they care about is playing the game. But there's certainly a group of people online, I'm one of them, I'll admit that, who would not like to see the whole franchise's story rebooted, because Street Fighter 1 through 5, along with Alpha, they form a very chronologically confusing timeline. So I think if a series goes, you've got the original Street Fighter game, and then Alpha, and then Street Fighter 2, then Street Fighter 4, then Street Fighter 5, then Street Fighter 3. That's the order of events.
Okay.
And the reason they kind of had to do that, because Street Fighter 3 is so far removed in terms of characters from the other games, that if they wanted to bring all the other characters back, they needed to have them taking place before Street Fighter 3. That's how removed it is from everything we know. Most people know about Street Fighter.
Yeah. What I do
know...
So
people are concerned, basically, in order to keep all the most popular characters in the game, they're going to have to reboot the timeline. Like Bison basically gets killed off in Street Fighter 5, and he's not in Street Fighter 3. Stuff like that.
Reading through some of the comments, there was a thing about Ryu had sandals on in the trailer. And people said, yeah, he got those because he stole them from Akuma after a fight or something. And I was like...
That's a logic leap.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay. Did that actually happen? I don't know. Or he stole them from somebody anyway. And then I saw one comment, which I'm assuming was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It was like, yeah, why hasn't Ryu got a hole in his stomach? Because that was pumped through by somebody at some point. I don't know. Would a timeline reboot be the worst thing in the world? From somebody that cares.
I guess if you want to include all of the characters, or to have full creative freedom over what characters are included in the game, then it would help them in that regard.
Could they not just release... If it releases with an arcade mode, couldn't they just have the characters that have been killed off not in the arcade mode, but have it in multiplayer?
They could do something. That's how basically the Fatal Fury games work. And Mortal Kombat, to my knowledge, as well.
Yeah, I kind of forget fighting games have story.
Yeah, they do. And most people do. That's what I'm saying. It's not that relevant to everyone. I'm saying it is something some people are concerned about will ruin things a bit. Is the fact that it won't make sense anymore. Like the Disney Star Wars sequels.
Why do you have to try and shoehorn this into every video?
Because Star Wars is relevant to everything.
Okay, that's fair. So we've spoken about what Capcom could do to screw things up. Let's talk about what you would do if you were in charge of creating Street Fighter 6. What would you want to do?
Okay, the way I look at things is if we even consider it a fighting game, if we do consider it a fighting I'm not talking about Street Fighter here. If we were to consider it a fighting game, the most successful of all time, the most successful fighting game franchise of all time is Smash Brothers.
That's a fair point. Okay, I'll take it.
And the Smash Brothers games have all been pretty similar to one another, and they've just built on the same formula time and time again. They just refined it and made it better. And again, you could argue that Brawl is the least popular because it deviated the most from the others.
Is that the Street Fighter 3 of...
Kind of, yeah. But it was the polar opposite of Street Fighter 3. Now we're going really off subject, but I'll tell you what, it was the opposite. They intentionally made the game as uncompetitive as possible because Nintendo are really angry that people were using Melee or Meal, whatever you want to call it, in competitive tournaments. It's like, Nintendo games aren't meant to be for competitive play. How dare you? So they nuked it and took all the competitive features out of Brawl.
And
intentionally
they added tripping.
Intentionally to...
Is that the one they added tripping into?
I don't know enough about it.
I'm pretty sure they added tripping into the game to add RNG so people could randomly fall over.
But they didn't want Smash to be competitive.
That would be one way of killing competitive.
But all I'm saying is they just took the same game, if you look at the Nintendo 64 game, kept building on it and making it bigger and better with more characters, more modes, more features, etc. And the most successful ever is obviously Street Fighter 2, so you just need to keep making a bigger and grander Street Fighter 2, which I suppose Street Fighter 4 is in a way. So, yeah, I'd like to see something more Street Fighter 2 like. But maybe that's because I'm just old, as some people like to say in the comments.
So what you would like is a Street Fighter 2 style game that has that fun, that arcade style play, that can be used competitively, but isn't its main focus.
Yes.
And a roster of characters which is complete.
Yeah, how awesome would that be?
With bonus stuff potentially added for DLC.
Yeah.
You'd be happy with DLC if it was bonus extra.
Yeah, like imagine they added like Terry Bogard as DLC.
I think that's pushing it. But
no, it's not. It isn't at all.
You think that's good?
You've had Akuma in Tekken, so why can you not have Terry Bogard in Street Fighter?
That's what I want. You got Ryu in Smash.
Exactly. Crossovers have happened.
Yeah, so maybe that would be what you'd like.
Yes. You
would quite happily pay your £10 or £15 to have Terry Bogard in.
Exactly that. Yeah.
I think that's really fair. Yeah. But that leaves a good question for the audience that are watching. What would you like to see in Street Fighter 6? How would you make the perfect Street Fighter 6 for you? We want to know your opinions in the comment section.
Street Fighter 2 Ultimate.
Is that really what you're going to make?
That's what they should be really making. Yeah. Not Street Fighter 6, Street Fighter 2 Ultimate. Everybody's here. That's what we want.
Super Smash Street Fighter.
Yeah. You know it's the right thing to do, everyone.
To be fair, that would be possibly the perfect Street Fighter game ever.
It would. Like, imagine that, just Street Fighter 2, but instead of just like for 16 stages we all know and love, you had like 100 stages. Like, imagine every single Street Fighter character ever in the Street Fighter 2 art style inserted into Street Fighter 2. It'd be amazing.
That would be amazing.
How come it's never been done? It's what everyone really wants.
Maybe they'll save that for Street Fighter 7.
Maybe.
Yeah. They could do some cool things though. So yeah, we want to know your opinions in the comment section.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, ding bloody ding, to ensure that you get...
Stop hatting it too much.
Okay, I'll try my best. Just subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's nice. You can do the subscribe to the channel, have a little notification thing. Like, I understand that bit, but you were doing the voice and everything.
It's hard not to. Like I said, I'm like Terry Bollea, brother. I find it very difficult to break kayfabe. I just fall back into.
I know. But you're a likeable man, and people don't know this.
No, don't need to either. I'm a private person.
I don't know why I did that with a vaguely kind of. I shouldn't have done that. That was weird. I'm sorry. But yeah, subscribe to this channel.
And be sure to let us know how you think Capcom should be making Street Fighter 6. We'll be hearing from you in the comments section. Cheerio!